Some wildlife was absolutely harmed in the making of this video. I am going to refrain from showing you graphic video and graphic images of hunting. However, there will be discussion of the topic. I am going to be talking about some animals that I took with this device. If hunting is a sensitive topic to you, if that just, gets you upset, I'd like to ask you to go ahead and move along now. There's going to be that sort of content in this video. Along with that, a number of other things were harmed in the making of this video. Stumps were shot, cans were shot, steel cans, aluminum cans, soup cans, tomato paste cans. There were a lot of other targets also damaged in the making of this video, and there will be quite a lot of that sort of footage. So again, if hunting is a sensitive topic to you, please move right along. You can go ahead and just find some other video to watch. And I do have plenty of other videos if you're interested in my videos. If you're okay with the topic of hunting and talking about the tools and devices that we use while hunting and talking about the damage done by hunting implements to those small furry woodland critters that I hunted, stick with me and here we'll get right in. Okay, today we are going to have a look at something really cool. We are looking at the Hammer Slingbow from Simpleshot.com. Okay, today we're having a look at something really cool. We're having a look at the Hammer Slingshot from Simpleshot.com. Okay, today we are having a look at something really cool. We're looking at a modular slingshot slingbow from Simpleshot.com, and this is the Hammer. The design of the Hammer, this modular design of this very cool device, comes from a fella named Mark Seljan, who is an industrial designer in Hungary. He is also a college professor. This is made, the manufacturer is Simpleshot.com. This is made by Nathan Masters, and I'm not privy to what the relationship between the designer and the manufacturer is, but I'm just really pleased that I was able to get one of these. This is one of the coolest things I've ever seen. We're going to start off by, I'm going to talk about critiques, shortcomings first, because I don't have anything to say there. There is one little piece of information that I think is kind of a legitimate sort of complaint, depending on how you think about things. And that's about it. I don't have anything bad to say about this device. I cannot find anything wrong with it. I did have one little thing go wrong that was a good test for Simpleshot's customer service, and we'll get to that in just a minute. The one legitimate sort of complaint, and I want to get this out of the way right up front and first, because this is going to be it. There's nothing else bad to say about this, and this isn't necessarily bad depending on your own thought process. Now, when I got this, when I bought this device and figured I was going to review it, I wanted to know what other people had to say about it. I watched just about every video there is, and I read a few written reviews, and I read some articles online about Nathan Masters, as a matter of fact. People have nice things to say about him who interview him, so, you might check that out yourself. US-made products by, a guy who's into something pretty cool that's pretty specific. Not everybody in the world is into slingshots for sure, but so he's got kind of a very specific crowd that he manufactures products for, but I think interest in that sport is growing. In any case, let's get to the one thing that I think is worth talking about that may or may not be a negative depending on how you think about these things. Reading the written reviews of this device on Simpleshot's website, I came across a guy who wasn't very happy. He said something that at first I just completely dismissed as, oh, yeah, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. What's his problem? That sort of thing. But it kind of stuck with me. I thought, you know, well, now maybe I can kind of see his point. So here's what that guy had to say mostly. He complained about shipping time, but you know what, when you're shipping something internationally, no matter if that border is close by or not, you know, you're at the whim of the people actually shipping and delivering the items. So I'm not going to take his delivery time complaint seriously, but he did talk about the band that comes with the Slingshot head. And so let's get this out of the way right now. The band that ships with the Slingshot head, for the Slingshot head, is a single layer latex band. This is the standard, you know, nicely done but not very powerful band that comes with the Scout, and I'm going to guess it comes with most of the other Slingshots that Simpleshot sells. I think that this is their standard band. Now, the fella that was complaining, you know, I thought about it, you know, that he said something about some other Slingshot that's supposed to be powerful, and, you know, that it came with, you know, some, who knows, you know, some heavy draw, really powerful bands, and that's what he was expecting with this. Now, when I think about it, I can kind of see his point, you know. The wrist brace and the design of this, and even a little bit of the marketing, would lead you to believe that this is a very powerful slingshot and slingbow. And it is, but not necessarily with the band that ships with it. So I think that's legit. I think that's something you ought to know up front, that it's, at least the Slingshot head, that is coming with a band that is a single layer latex, you know, and you cut this to whatever length is appropriate for your draw, and you install it, and we'll talk about how to install the bands here in just a few minutes. But, you know, yeah, so this very powerful looking, and you would assume powerful device, largely because of the wrist brace and, you know, this hammer handle, and how thick the head is, and how, you know, how durable this thing is. You would assume that you're holding a very powerful device in your hand. But, you know, here's the other way to think about that. Now, this was not my first slingshot. So I have a whole bunch of bands, and I continue to buy other bands to see, you know, how they perform with different ammunition and things like that. I don't think I really read too closely, you know, if he says what band ships with this or not. I have, you know, a whole bunch of other bands, including the ones that are on here, that are made for hunting. You know, the bands that I've got on here right now, I got from Simpleshot. This is a set of what he calls his nitro bands, and I selected one with a pouch for medium-sized ammo. And this is the bands you'll see mostly in some of the footage that's going to roll in during this video, at least for slingshot shooting. These are very powerful bands, and they're very easy to install, and I was blowing 38 and 40 caliber lead balls through soup cans, no problem. So yeah, plenty powerful. In fact, this exact set of bands with 44 caliber lead, I've taken 3 rabbits with this exact set of bands, set up exactly the way you see it here. No change whatsoever. I have taken 3 rabbits, I'm going to say probably 7 or 8 pack rats, probably 8, maybe even 9, but I took a bunch with the Slingbow too, and I'm having to think back through that. But a number of pack rats. I killed, I'm going to say 25 to 30 gophers, and we've talked about gophers in previous slingshot videos. If you live in the eastern part of the United States and parts of Europe, you might call a gopher a ground squirrel. They may be a ground squirrel to you, but here they're a gopher. They're a ground squirrel. They dig holes in the ground. They live in the ground. But they're a squirrel. They look like a squirrel. They're the size of a squirrel. They're that kind of rodent. Here we call them gophers. I've killed many of those with this setup and with some other bands I've had in here. I've got a bunch of different bands, but these bands, these exact ones, done in, yeah, at least 25 squirrel-sized critters, gophers, at least 8 pack rats, and a few other just little varmints, field mice. I've done in, I don't know, in the last 2 months, I've probably killed 50 field mice with this slingshot, but again, not all of them with these exact bands, but some of the other bands I have been on here, and field mice are pretty easy to do in with lighter bands than this, and you know, and also I find single layer bands, you know, quicker to get the second shot off. If you miss them and see where they go, you can get loaded again a little quicker than with these double layer. They don't tend to get tangled up quite as much. Okay, so let's talk about some of the design features here. And right about here, you're probably seeing me change the heads right now. Really easy to change the heads. There's a little metal lever on one side of the handle. You push that to the side, pop the head off, you know, put the other head on, and away you go. One of the things I've read people say, and one video I saw somebody said a little something about it, that the head can be a little bit sticky in the handle, and I find that to be true, but there are a number of things you can do to lubricate that. What I did was I took a lead ball and I just rubbed a little lead on the you know, on the receiver, on the part that on the head that drops into the slot on both sides. Lead is a pretty good lubricant if you aren't aware of that. You could also use graphite from a pencil. That won't harm FRN. And then there are, you know, just a number of other things. I've got a little tube of a plastic safe, no petroleum kind of jelly lubricant that I used when I was a copier repairman. That stuff will not harm FRN. You do have to be careful with petroleum-based lubricants when you're dealing with fiberglass reinforced nylon devices, and that is what this is made out of. Is, you know, it's just like a modern pistol handle. Or a modern rifle stock, you know, one that's not made out of wood. It's made out of, this is a Zytel, although you can't use the word Zytel without getting in trouble with DuPont. So people call it FRN. It's the same stuff, or pretty close to it anyway. Okay, so it's easy to change the heads. You can leave your bands on one head for, you know, the slingshot head, and you can leave your Slingbow bands on the other head, and you can just swap them out, you know. So it's a multi-purpose device, and that's pretty cool. Okay, next, the next feature to talk about is the wrist brace. The wrist brace folds up You can fold this device up like this so that it's a smaller package wherever you decide you're going to carry it. I have carried this one in my backpack for the last 2 months in my day bag. This has been with me every day for the last couple of months, and I just fold it up, pop it in my day bag, throw the other head in on top of it, and then, you know, whichever way I want to shoot, I just swap the head. This wrist brace extends back out and locks into position. It's just a spring form. There's a little detent here that it pops over. Right there, there's a little detent, and that keeps it deployed. This is what's really cool about this, other than the fact that it folds up to make it a smaller package. The part that goes over your wrist, this is Velcro and fully adjustable. So if you are wearing a coat, or if you're wearing short sleeves like I am right now, you can adjust this to fit your situation. I like that quite a bit. Now, having a wrist brace takes, you know, some of the geometry out of what you have to think about when you're shooting a device like this. Your forks are always going to be standing off, you know, at the angle that the wrist brace makes them stand off to. So if I want to tighten this up a little bit, and then I can open my hand even. My hand is just completely open. Let me make sure my Velcro is down here so I don't do anything dumb. But, so, you know, the angle of my forks isn't tilting this way, isn't tilting that way, even with my palm wide open. That's pretty darn handy. Okay, the next feature I want to talk about is this accessory rail on the bottom of the Slingshot. This is Weaver and Picatinny compatible as far as I can tell, and he does advertise that this should accept, you know, just about anything that'll go on a Weaver or a Picatinny standard size rail. What I have used this for is he sells a flashlight mount, a weapon light mount for this, and then he also sells a Slingbow, you know, a bow fishing kit. So there's a reel that will mount on here, and you can use the Slingbow as, you know, for bow fishing, and that's pretty cool. I have not bought that yet, but come springtime, you know, we're only a couple weeks from ice fishing where I live, so you know, bow fishing will not be a thing until April or May or so, I would imagine. But I might buy that bow fishing kit. I think that's cool as heck. But I don't own that yet. But what I do have, and we'll roll in a picture here of, you know, this thing with one of my just regular 1-inch tube flashlights mounted to it. This allowed me to do quite a lot of night hunting. I've got a couple things to say about that. This is very cool for nocturnal critters, you know, going to hunt nocturnal critters like rodents and skunks and raccoons and things of that nature. Just being able to put a bright weapon light on here is very cool. There are a couple drawbacks, and I do have a recommendation for an improvement, at least in the Slingshot, or in the Slingbow head, not for the Slingshot head because it wouldn't work. But I do have a suggestion for an improvement to this design in Slingbow mode for night hunting. And you know, we'll get to that here in a couple minutes too. So right now what you're seeing is just a little bit of footage of me, you know, hunting at night. You might have been seeing that for the last couple of minutes. What I was successful with hunting at night was, now I passed on a shot on a raccoon the night that you're seeing right now. I did not take that shot. We aren't protecting a garden out there at the farm anymore. We didn't have a garden this year or last year. So when I saw a raccoon, I didn't do anything about him. I let him go because I'm not defending a garden from him. I did take a skunk, got one skunk, punched it right through the lungs with an arrow. I used one of the carbon arrows for that and just a trocar tip on it. Punched right through him, no problem. He wasn't even able to spray because I was able to get both his lungs. That was nice. And there's a tip for if you ever hunt skunks. If you, if you shoot them with a 22 or whatever you hunt skunks with, punch their lungs and they will not spray. That's good information to have. Also, I got a bunch of pack rats. So I've been very successful hunting pack rats with the flashlight. I got a skunk using the flashlight on the Slingbow. And, like I said, I passed on a shot on a raccoon. And I've gotten a bunch of field mice in slingshot mode with the flashlight attached to the bottom. What you're seeing here is probably me shooting a couple of logs, a couple of stumps, and my arrow target. I did some simulating some hunting because pretty much every time I was out with the flashlight, I was able to kill something that we wanted to get rid of. Mostly, again, pack rats and things of that nature. Okay, as far as daytime hunting with the Slingbow, I've also been successful with that, and I see a real benefit to hunting as a Slingbow, even with critters that you could kill with the slingshot, particularly rabbits. I've been successful. I've taken a few rabbits in slingshot mode, and I've taken a few rabbits in Slingbow mode, and honestly, it's a lot easier to get them in Slingbow mode. That's just, there's just some reality to be dealt with there. Rabbit's brain is a little bit over an inch. It's about the size of a quarter. And hitting them in the head, you pretty much have to impact them where the impact will affect their brain. There's also a 1 inch or so spot in the back of their neck and along the side of their neck that is very, very fragile. That, a nice impact on that spot is also deadly to a cottontail. With the Slingbow, it broadens the size of your target. You can hit them anywhere in the head, anywhere in the neck, and anywhere in the front part of the rib cage. If you know how a rabbit, where his guts are, his heart's down, up in the front of his rib cage. His liver sits almost next to it, just below his lungs, and anywhere in that, 2.5 inch size target is deadly. Plus, the Slingbow is plenty powerful enough to stick a rabbit to the ground. He isn't getting away. Now, I didn't have any killing shots but I can imagine this, that if you hit him a little bit toward the rear, if you got behind where all the important organs are, if you missed, to one side or the other, behind where the important organs are, you'd have an arrow sticking through him, and he's not getting away from you. You can go kill him, by another method. Okay, well, by no means is this the final feature to talk about. Let's go over these Ocularis plugs. These are a rubber plug that you push a ball bearing into to keep it secure. When you're shooting flat bands through either head, now this is the Slingbow head is also capable of flat bands, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. When you're installing flat bands, the bands are inserted from the target side, and then the plugs are inserted from the user side. When you are using loop tubes, the tubes are inserted from the user side, and then the plugs are inserted from the target side. And it's simple, it's fast, it's easy. This is super easy. I can't believe how easy it is. Just takes a moment to, if you, in the case of these tubes, you got to use something a little bit narrower to push the ball bearing out of the plug. But you know, the inside of the guts of a pen work pretty good. And, you know, you might have something on your multi-tool or whatever to stick in there, not damage. It has to be smooth so you don't damage the your tubes to push the ball bearing back out of the plug there. And then you just push the plug out the front and everything's all loose and you're ready to change your bands. This takes just a couple of minutes. You need to make sure that your bands are even, you know, so that you don't have anything weird with your aim, because one band is tighter on the bottom than on the top and the other one's not that way. You could end up with some anomalies, and I did actually. The first time I installed the bands that came with this, I did have some aiming anomalies that I solved by reseating my bands. Again, on the when you're dealing with this, as with flat bands, the plugs insert exactly opposite, and that's just how it works. It's just how it goes. So there we have that. Yeah, these Ocularis plugs are super easy, super cool. Just makes it, you know, band changes are fast. And these plugs seem to accept all kinds of different bands. Plus, on the Slingshot specifically, you can also use these for loop tubes if you want to. You can install them the way you saw those white ones for the Slingbow. Let me see if I can get this in. Maybe I can't, but there is a, oh, there we go. You'll see at the very top and at the very bottom, there's a notch in that plug. And you just, exactly the same way, you put your loop tube over that and then push the plug in, but you'll do it exactly opposite than you do with the bands. They install from the other side. In the case of flat bands, you can see the bands are installed from the target side, and then they wrap over top of the fork. And these can be in any position you want. These can be over the top, they can be through the forks, or anywhere in between. So I'm led to believe that you folks who are very comfortable with natural forks will appreciate that, to be able to adjust this anywhere from, you know, through the forks to over the top. Anywhere in there you can find your sweet spot to have your bands. So that's pretty nifty, and the Ocularis plugs are really easy, and they make changing bands really fast. And yeah, that's what I got to say about that. That's slick, that's good design work. Somebody's super smart, you know, they're smarter than me anyway. Before we go any further, since I just poked myself in the chest with it, let's talk about this. I told you earlier in the video that I ran into one very small problem, which turned out to be a nice test for Simpleshot's customer service. I popped one of these off somehow. This is a you know, like a wire nut. It's not really a wire nut. It's, I guess maybe it is, you know, but it's about 1/4 inch size, and it's a little rubber end on there, and I believe that they just glued these on. I lost one of these. In fact, while I was shooting this last night footage just a couple of nights ago, I popped one of these off, and I couldn't find it because it was dark outside. And you know, I can see a little bit of glue residue on here, so I'm sure they just glued this on, and I might have been rough with it or whatever, but it doesn't matter. I emailed Simpleshot and I said, hey, you know, what is that? What's that made out of? You know, so I could go pick one up if they're available, or, you know, maybe I could, you know, order one from you next time I get some bands. And they were very cool, told me exactly what to look for in the hardware store if I wanted to go spend 4 cents on one of these or whatever it may be. And they also said, hey, next time you order bands, just remind us, we'll throw a couple in the box for you. And they were very cool about it. So, and I got, you know, as always with them, I got a very immediate response. Monday morning, the second they were in the office, they were responding to my weekend inquiry about this little thing. So kudos, you know, I mean, Simpleshot is very, very good at communication and customer service. I like that. This little doohickey here, not a big deal, but you know, you can be aware of that you might check these when you get one. Make sure that they're glued on there nice, you know. I guess, I don't know, I probably hung up on something. I don't know, I was in some brush. As you'll probably see in some of the video footage I've been rolling in and out, I was in some dense brush in the dark. I might have snagged this on something and never noticed, but it went flying off and I never found it. So there we go. Next feature to talk about on both the heads. Now, let's swap heads real quick here. And that should make it obvious that this is actually very simple. That took 2 seconds to swap the heads. All right, so while we've got this head swapped, let's talk about, now I've seen some other videos of people shooting these, and one in particular, and I do business with the guy, I like him, they've got good customer service too. Rob from the Canteen Shop did a video on this because he carries these, and that's very cool. Now, while I think that it's entirely possible to shoot this the way Rob does in his video, something like this, I don't think you're going to find all your power the way he's doing it. He shoots with it up like this, and I'm not saying it's wrong, and he's left-handed too, I think, so he'd be on the other side. But, you know, I don't know, I haven't been able to quite figure it out how a guy would get all the power possible out of this, shooting with it straight up and down. I am guessing, and I hope somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, but I am guessing that this was really meant to be, you know, a side shooter like this. And if you look right here, that little divot in the fork swell here, you know, I believe that that is meant to be an aiming reference, and it is set up, you know, for either-handed if you're right or left-handed, which leads us to the next topic here. Another thing that Simpleshot sells, I did not buy this from them, but I believe that this is the one that they carry. I've had this laying around for, I don't know, a few years. This is a mechanical release, and let me get out a set of bands that I removed the leather tab from so that we can demonstrate this. Here we go. This is a well-used set of bands. This is a mechanical release, and I do think it's the one that he sells. I didn't get it from Simpleshot, but I think that that's the one that he sells. There is some benefit to this if you're trying to be super accurate, if you're target shooting, and also the amount of power that you can get, is this this thing goes around your wrist, and you know, it's also adjustable. May as well show it since I believe this is the one that he sells. I'm not going to get too in depth here with this, but his videos and some of his marketing do indicate that the preferred method of using the Slingbow is with a mechanical release like this. So, you know, it's perfectly set up for that. This is like number 50 bowstring, or I don't know, I'm just guessing there. I should look that up. But, you know, so there we go. There's a, when this is around your wrist, you don't even have to have a hold of it. So I think it's probably safer, you know, to operate the Slingbow with a mechanical release. I do think it's safer. If you're out all by yourself and just hunting in the woods and whatnot, you know, it's not like you're going to be able to point a 31-inch arrow at yourself very easily. So you know, your safety concerns are your safety concerns. You know where you're shooting and what's behind what you're shooting at, and etc. So I'm not going to do any preaching on that topic. And I'm going to talk about my suggestion for an improvement to this design, or a modification for you guys who are into modding stuff. Let's get to this right now. So what I'd like to see in a future iteration of this, and let's get back to the live camera here. What we've got here, these are a couple of sticks of True Glow, and these belong to the front sight of one of my pistols. Really tiny little, whoops, just about dropped it, and this stuff's small. But hopefully the camera will pick up those ends, or I don't know how well it can see that or not, but there we go, probably sees that. These ends glow where they absorb light from the other side. This is a fiber optic sight. This stuff's really tiny. I don't know what size that is, but that would take a very small drill bit. You'd run a little stick of this True Glow through, let me put this back in the bag, and you know, right in here on either side of this aiming reference, you know, where both sides of where it's thick, sticking a little tiny little rod of True Glow, drilling a tiny hole through there and sticking a True Glow that goes all the way through and to your side. When you're out hunting with a flashlight, here's what I learned while I was out in the dark. When I was down by the creek bottom where things are wet and it's absorbing all of the light from the flashlight, when I was out just in the absolute dark without the aid of the yard light, I really, you can see the silhouette of the slingshot head, but it's really hard to pick an aiming reference. It's really difficult to see down your bands like that and pick an aiming reference. So I think that I would really like to have a little True Glow dot on either side of that aiming reference. And of course, to market that, you'd have to do it on both sides, you know, to make it right or left-handed. Now, when I was in the tractor barn and in other areas where I got good reflection off that very bright flashlight, you know, it was no big deal. I could see my aiming reference. I could see this notch here without too much difficulty. But when I was out in the pitch black and trying to sneak up on stuff down in the creek bottom, this was not easy to see, and I shot high a lot. I've been out night hunting a number of times now, and that has been, you know, a real issue is that I tend to shoot high when I'm way out in the dark because I'm having trouble picking my aiming reference. So yeah, I think that that's a reasonable improvement to suggest and something cool. Now, that's no good with flat bands, because the flat bands install over top of this and then back through, as we just discussed a little while ago. So maybe that's not so necessary on the Slingshot head, but on the Slingbow head, since they are using loop tubes for the Slingbow, I think that that would be perfectly appropriate and quite useful. Okay, moving on from there. What's left to talk about? Okay, the construction materials. We've talked a little bit about this. This is an FRN, very, very thick, very, very strong. It's been milled out a little bit, or you know, the way they molded it to save a little bit of weight. But it's hefty. You know, this is a pretty hefty device. Along with that, I'll mention here that you could remove this whisker biscuit. It is replaceable. Take these two screws out, and you could use this head as a slingshot head. The head is a little bit different height than the slingshot head. It's really hard to see the difference, but I believe that the Slingbow head is slightly higher than the slingshot head. I think the slingshot head sits a little bit lower in the handle. So, you know, your mileage may vary, but I do believe you could just pull the whisker biscuit and use this as a slingshot head if you wanted to. Okay, now I think I'll you know, show you a little bit of footage. I put a couple of arrows in a stewed tomato can, 10-pound, number 10 can, you know, a full coffee can sized. That was a stewed tomato can, and I put a couple of arrows in it. I put one of these aluminum arrows, one of these Eastman 455 grain arrows, and I shot a 400 grain arrow through it, and it's quite unspectacular. The arrows just punch straight through both sides of the can, hit the piece of wood behind them, and stop. Along with that, I shot a peanut can that's a half-size coffee can, another steel can. You've seen me use that for targets for slingshot a number of times. They're very durable targets. They're a steel can, and yeah, the arrows just punch right through them, and in fact, in a couple of instances, I destroyed the fletching on the arrow because it went all the way through the steel can, all the way to the fletching before the ground stopped it. Yeah, so when we're talking about the power these things have with even just the standard bands on here, okay, could this be a very accurate kind of target slingshot for plinking and having fun and slinging arrows and just a recreation sort of device? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and I've done quite a lot of that this last couple of months. It's very addictive. I've enjoyed it quite a lot, and I've had this with me every day. It's fun. It's fun to shoot it. I think what a lot of people are thinking about, though, is how is it as a hunting device? Now, I've talked a little bit about that. Let's return to that topic of hunting just a little bit, and I'll tell you what the first critter I killed with the Slingbow was. I took this Slingbow out at my dad's place, and I did have my pistol with me because the critter I was after is a substantial, dangerous animal. I went and got a badger, and I got that full-grown 28-pound badger with one shot with the Slingbow. I put one of these carbon arrows with one of these trocar tips without the judo tip. I had the judo springs off of here. I put one of these through left lung, down through her heart, and stuck her to the ground. Yeah, it punched all the way through a 28-pound badger, and the dirt stopped the arrow because I had a little bit of elevation. I was shooting down anyway, but of course I'm much taller than a badger. That was about a 38-foot shot. I paced it off a couple of times after everything was said and done, and I had her at 38 feet. And one of these 400 grain carbon arrows with one of these trocar tips. Hopefully it'll focus on that. I wish it would focus. There we go. That might help. With one of these trocar tips, punched through a 28-pound badger through her thickest point, which is, 9 inches or so wide. Punched through her, and the ground stopped the arrow. It was a fairly immediate kill. I got one lung and the top of her heart, and yeah, it was over in a hurry. She didn't get very far. She didn't get back down her hole, and of course she was pierced through with an arrow, so it would have stopped her anyway. But yeah, this punched through 9 inches of badger meat and guts and ribs, and badgers are substantial. That is a substantial animal. That's, all their muscle. Badgers are opposite to a rabbit. A rabbit muscles are all in the back legs, and it's the tenderloins in the back legs. That's where 85% of the meat on a rabbit is all behind its rib cage. Badger's just the opposite. They're a digger, and their weight is all in their chest in the front of them. And I went through, basically the thickest part of that badger, and one shot was a nice clean kill. That taught me an awful lot. The other thing about badgers is that their bones are strong. They have way thicker bones than a rabbit or any of the other, any of the rodents I've been hunting. They're a substantial, thick, heavy, fairly thick-boned animal. And this went through both sets of ribs. It was left hand facing me. It was broadside to me with its left side toward me, and I went through just behind its left shoulder, top of that lung, or the bottom of that lung, all the way through the top of its heart, and then out the ribs on the other side and into the ground. And that's an awful lot of power. So what I learned from that is that if I were in a bad situation or a survival situation, or all of those things we like to talk about in this genre, this is perfectly appropriate. Though illegal in my state, I couldn't use this to take such game, but this, I believe, is perfectly capable of taking deer-sized animals at reasonable distances. And that reasonable distance is probably different for you than it is for me, or might be different than my buddy who brought his recurve, because that guy's an expert archer. But regardless, at reasonable distances, if you were carrying something like this as a survival item, maybe with 2 or 3 or 4 of these takedown arrows and maybe some couple of broadheads packed away in your gear, could you take deer-sized animals? You betcha. You betcha. This leads me to some of the other things I have to say about this particular device. And what we go from, all right, yeah, you can hunt with a slingshot, and I've proven that before, and I've talked about it in some of my other videos before. You can kill rabbit-sized critters, you can kill birds, even fair-sized ones, ducks, and you get a headshot on a goose, you could take a goose-sized bird, if that's what you want to do. Also illegal in my state. I looked into this. There's a lot of things I'm not supposed to do with the slingshot or a slingbow. These are not legal methods of take for any game animal. I am free to hunt varmints and other critters that are non-game critters with either one of these, but as far as game animals, I cannot take them with these in my state legally. Now, if we're talking about a survival situation, I've got something like this in my survival gear, and I am hungry enough to go hunt a deer with a slingbow. At that point, I am probably not concerned in my mind about whether or not I'm obeying the law. So, yeah, as far as processing this as an idea, yeah, absolutely. This is powerful enough. This goes from being a dangerous and something you can hunt with device as a slingshot to an absolutely deadly weapon as a slingbow. Absolutely deadly weapon. That's what this becomes. You can sling, broadhead tipped arrows. I don't have any broadheads laying here, but you can sling 400, 450 grain arrows, 350 grain with 100 grain, broadhead on them at velocities that are deadly to, animals of all sizes. Okay, so I think we've covered all of that. I talked about, you know, the one little thing that I think could be an improvement. I mentioned these takedown arrows. If you were gonna, you know, put something like this in a survival kit, these were worthwhile. I've been using these, so I can fit them in my backpack. I usually just have a couple of them with me, and I've got I just spin these tips off of them. The other thing that I'm going to say that you ought to have as an accessory for sure is a target to practice with. I'll put a link down in the description to that black hole target that I use. It's an 18-inch block. It's very portable. It's not too heavy. I throw it on the seat of the truck, go wherever I'm going and use it as a target, or just throw it out in the yard and use it as a target. It's easy. It's small. So it's about the smallest target of that type that I trust to stop arrows that are flying at it 150, 160, 170 feet per second. So I'll put a link to that down in the description. It's also not hugely expensive. And yeah, what else? Oh, you know what? I did talk about some different tips. I showed you these judo tips, and I use these out in the woods. When I was hunting gophers too. These keep you from losing your arrows, and they don't reduce the deadliness of your arrow. They also make these in a blunt. See, that's a nice metal blunt there and a judo tip. And I use a couple brands of these judo tips. I like them both about the same. I haven't damaged one more often than the other or anything of that nature. Although, you know, these are a little bit better just because they feel a little bit stronger. But for stump thumping, practice, squirrels, even rabbits, that's a nice blunt. These rubber blunts, this is a 125 grain rubber blunt, which makes this overall package a little bit heavier than I like to shoot. But I thumped a rabbit with that. I took one of the rabbits that I took with this blunt, worked perfectly. Up to a rabbit-sized critter, these kind of blunts. You know, they make all kinds of broadheads. I don't have any preference, and I don't have any here to show you because I'm not taking game that size. One kind of last thing to talk about is the price. Now, the Hammer Slingshot, Slingbow, as you see it here, with the white Ocularis plugs, the black Ocularis plugs, both heads, the standard set of tube bands for Slingbow mode, and not the bands that I have on here, but the single layer band for Slingshot mode. You know, this is $100 worth of gear. That's, if you go to Simpleshot's website, that's what he gets. I think that's what Canteen Shop is getting. You know, it's $100. Which gets me back to that discussion about the bands. This was not my first slingshot, and I don't think it ought to be yours either. I think that we're getting into kind of advanced devices here, and you ought to know what a modern slingshot's like before you buy something like this. Because again, we go from destructive, fairly dangerous, to deadly weapon by swapping these heads. I would, you know, again, I told you I wasn't going to harp on the safety stuff too much, but I'm going to say that this is not what I would recommend as a first slingshot. I don't think that that's appropriate or a good idea. My own personal opinion. If it is, if you've got your heart set on one of these, man, put in some practice before you go too crazy with it. You know, make sure you are accurate so you don't wound any critters. Make sure you're strong so that you can hold this kind of weight. There are some things to think about, and this is kind of an advanced device in comparison to the other slingshots I've shown you, for instance, previous videos. So that said, $100 worth of slingshot. Is it worth it? You betcha. You betcha. I don't think he's charging enough for it. There are a lot of custom slingshots and wood slingshots out there way over $100 that you're not getting all this with. You are getting a lot of beauty with those, and I mean, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. I like industrial design, kind of cool stuff like this, you know, but a lot of guys like, you know, hand finished, beautiful Coca-Cola or whatever you might be getting from somebody to make you a beautiful wood piece like that. There's a lot to be said for that too. But again, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. There are a lot of those kind of slingshots on the market. There are a lot of guys that'll hand make you something well over $100, and here's all this functionality and potential for incredible power and hunting ability for a $100 bill. Yes, worth every penny. I don't think he's charging enough. He ought to charge more. Okay, I've said it all. This is a great device. It is one of the coolest things I've bought in an awful long time. I have had a ton of fun. I've been out every chance I can get, either hunting or taking target practice with the hammer. It is spectacular. It is durable. It is strong. It is versatile, and it is innovative. You aren't going to find anything else out there that's like this. This is very cool, and these little extra details like being able to mount a flashlight or a fishing rig, that's awesome. That expands the capability of this device so much. I love it. I absolutely love it. Simpleshot's customer service, perfect. I'll have a new one of these. I'm going to just pick one up in a hardware store. They told me exactly what it was, and I'm just going to go get one, use some super glue myself. But you know, next time I order bands, I might bug them again. I might test their customer service one more time. But those guys have been great. They answer questions just pretty much immediately, within a day. Over a weekend, you know, you might, if you ask a question on Saturday, you're probably waiting until Monday morning, but they get right back to you, and it doesn't matter what crazy nonsense you throw at them, they'll give you an answer. I've tested them a couple of times now, and yeah, they're cool. I really like that. So they're worth doing business with. American-made product, well-made product. Awesome design from Mark Seljan in Hungary. I don't know what else to say, but go get one. You know, you should go get one. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm going to continue to use it for hunting rodents and varmints and you know, and the occasional rabbit. I am the only person in my family that eats rabbits, so I tend to not hunt them a lot, but you know, when I'm out in the farm on my own, I'm spending the day, yeah, I cook rabbit. I like it, and this is perfectly capable in either mode of getting rabbit, and it's a fun way to do it. I do prefer doing that with the Slingbow because I have about the same amount of range and a larger target to take, considering, you know, where the placement of rabbit guts are, where their hearts are, where their, you know, where their important organs are, as a bigger target than that quarter or less sized brain in their little head. So yeah, there you go. Okay, that's it. That's all I've got to say. I think that this was worth every penny to me, and it's worth every penny all this other stuff I've bought. And I'm going to stock some extra bands, and I think that this is going to be with me for years and years to come. I've kind of gotten addicted to the slingshots and whatnot, and the Slingbow is just so powerful. You'll see, so you've seen some footage along the way of some of the destruction I'm able to create with the Slingbow on this. So yeah, very cool, very cool. Okay, I really want to thank you folks for all the time you just took watching this and all the time you take watching my other videos. I very much appreciate that. You're very kind to me with your time. If you can help me out with a thumbs up down there in the bottom right hand side of this video, You know, YouTube likes to see those. They do help my channel. I'd appreciate it. If you appreciated this content, you know, think about clicking that subscribe button if you are not already a subscriber. If you are a subscriber, thank you. Thank you for coming back to watch another one. If you're not, I'd like to have you back again sometime. I think I'm going to be doing some other videos in this sort of a topic. I've been thinking about casting lead balls video, and I've been working on a process for making perfectly round clay balls and being able to cure them, you know, without having to spend a bunch of money. Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. That'll be coming up one of these days. I don't know exactly when, but it's on my mind. Okay, I think that's it. If you have any questions about this, leave them down in the comments. If you have any comments about this, leave those down in the comments too. And I really appreciate it. I hope the rest of your day goes really, really well. Bye-bye now.